America's newsrooms are largely places where money goes to die, where shareholder capital goes to be burned. You know, most newsrooms out there are propped up by their larger parent companies that have other assets or other TV shows that actually generate positive revenue. And for years, it's been an issue with newsrooms going the exact opposite direction. And apparently, MSNBC is really no different. Why else would Comcast be looking to spin them and other actual linear broadcast channels out into their own new separate entity? That's something they're trying to do right now. And one of the reasons might be Rachel Maddow. Now, Rachel Maddow is somebody who recently took a terrible $5 million a year pay cut, bringing her annual salary down to only $25 million. And the scary thing is, and one of the reasons why Comcast might be looking to dump this dead weight, because Rachel Maddow, when you actually do the numbers, is paid more money than Robert Downey Jr. for a fraction of the audience.
Renegade Online.
This is what people are looking at right now. And this is not an accident that this is happening. Right after the election, NBCUniversal split Comcast to spin off cable channels under Mark Lazarus. Donna Langley consolidates power. NBC Peacock Bravo to stay put. So here's the deal. Let me break this down succinctly. Is that Comcast Universal, who is first and foremost Comcast, meaning the bread and butter, the top-line revenues of this company, unlike the Walt Disney Company, are not with television and theme parks. That is secondary, even in many cases tertiary, to the financial operation of this company. Comcast is primarily a linear provider, meaning the bulk of their revenues, billions and billions and billions and billions and billions of year in revenues, are due to providing things like phones, internet, and cable to American consumers. Now, they also own NBC and NBC Studios and Universal Studios as an adjunct to their business. And they've decided that, like so many others, like we saw recently with AT&T in the last few years, spinning that out, merging it with Warner, or excuse me, spinning out Warner Brothers and merging it with Discovery and David Zaslav. We're seeing this here now with NBC, but they're cherry picking, and I think this is brilliant. Brian Roberts is not a stupid guy. Brian is the CEO and I believe executive chairman, if not mistaken, of Comcast. So we're spinning out the trash that ain't working. And I want to be clear so everybody understands this when they discuss this online. Comcast is not necessarily, and this may change, this is not written in stone, but as of right now, based on the reports, they're looking at a spinoff. This is not to say that they are selling MSNBC or some of these other derelict properties. But the key is that they do consider MSNBC as one of the financially derelict properties. And the reason why a company like Comcast does this in this situation is because properties like MSNBC have become an albatross around the throat of Comcast. They are a freaking dumpster of cash. What happened this week? Rachel Maddow, big news, Rachel Maddow, right, of MSNBC, who does one show a week for this crazy woman, one show a week, who gets paid $30 million a year for one show a week. This is MSNBC's top broadcaster, right? She took an absolute throat-cutting pay decrease of $5 million. Now she's only getting paid $25 million a year.
They're still treating it like funny money.
25 million too fucking much.
Well, that's just it. Now, let me tell you what. I pulled this hat out early. This is why I had it here. The Rush Limbaugh hat. I've had this hat for 25 years. Original EIB hat. Okay? Let me tell you what. I still remember Rush 20 plus years ago talking about how even back then, 20 plus years ago, the newsrooms of places like ABC, NBC, CBS were well-known loss leaders, meaning that these stations, these broadcasters, right, these folks out there, they knew these newsrooms were just money pits. It was a Tom Hanks movie. It was The Money Pit, right? Everybody remember that one? The fixer-up house that never stopped having to be fixed up. That has been every newsroom in America for like over 20 years. The cable news channels were trying to take that over, but the idea was because the anchors on these shows, Rachel Maddows of the world, and everybody else, they would demand so much money that frankly they weren't worth. It was basically giant welfare checks to leftist broadcasters out there to shape the news as opposed to reporting it. Does anybody out there honestly believe? Think about this for a second. Rachel Maddow, $30 million a year. That's more money than Robert Downey Jr. was guaranteed for most of his first films with Marvel. Let that sink in. For 50 weeks out of that's 50 hours, basically. 50 hours of on-camera work for Rachel Maddow. Think about that's like 2 days for Robert Downey Jr. on set on a Marvel movie. That's what she's getting paid. And it's still not that big of a rating on cable TV. It's amazing to me. This is why Comcast Universal is ditching that. They're going to spin it out into a separate corporate entity that Comcast stockholders will still own the vast majority of, but they are going to get, and this is the key, folks, they are going to get these losses off of their books. This is what Comcast is trying to do. What they're trying to do right now is they're looking at the lowest performing assets that they have, the things that are sucking up most of the cash flows, the free cash flows, the FCFs on the balance sheets each and every financial reporting quarter. They want to get those off because they want to be able to report better returns to stockholders. And if they throw things like MSNBC out of the window and put them in their own business entity and just collect dividends for whatever profits it might make, it's going to make the Comcast balance sheet look better. That's why they're doing this. All right, I'm done.
So
everybody jump in.
There's two sides to this coin. Not only have they been subsidizing a losing proposition out of the legacy media, but the new media is taking over. And I want to show this to everybody. Let me put this up on screen real quick, folks. This is Megyn Kelly over on Social Blade.
Yep.
I want you to see this because you've got to understand where the viewership has gone. Megyn Kelly was supposed to be gone. She's supposed to be canceled. She lost out on NBC, and she was supposed to be thrown out into the desert somewhere, never to be seen again. Megyn Kelly is pulling 200 million views per month on YouTube. She is outperforming the networks, and she is doing it roundly. Now, my curiosity for Mark, it seems to me that much of what the legacy media was being driven by was an archetypal battle between good and evil. And good was Obama, and anybody who worked under Obama or was associated with Obama, and evil was Trump. And the battle of good and evil is what propelled the viewership of MSNBC, CNN, and the network news. That is now gone. And I was curious do you have any in your polling that's you've got going underway right now? Do you have any idea? Do you think the Democrats are going to moderate after this? Do you get the sense that they're going to become farther to the left? Like, which side of this is going to win out as they look for their foothold for their narrative?
Okay. This election, I think, was a referendum on government and authority that had been weaponized. It had nothing to do with Kamala Harris. To be honest, she was kind of a mid candidate, and any Democrat could have been put in there, probably still would have had the same outcome. I think this election was lost way before this year. And in fact, the fact that she did as well as she did was kind of surprising because we've asked people, do you trust the federal government? Only 30% of people say yes. All kinds of horrible fundamentals about how everybody's worse than they were 4 years ago. It was just Trump's election. And now I think what you're starting to see is that there are really two worlds right now, one that embraces reality and one that doesn't. And I think that that's the major undercurrent here, in that people are sick of this fakeness, this inauthenticity. And that's how she ran her campaign. And the mainstream media now is very inauthentic. If you go and watch cable news, any topic is basically just, a couple of 30-second talking points. That's not how people consume information. And this isn't only just about Joe Rogan. It's about streams like this. It's about the kind of 20-minute videos I put out. It's about Megyn Kelly. People feel like they're getting true information. So now there were a whole lot of people that totally ignored reality for the last 8 years, right? And now those people are kind of scattered. And I think the paradigm we're in is going to change some of their opinions. And what we're seeing with Cenk is the same situation. I think now it was really hard to look back and say, well, why are the people doing what they're doing? But now we can see that there was a carrot and a stick. And the carrot right now, if you look at Cenk's social blade, he's actually put on 50,000 followers on Twitter in the last month. He's earning a lot of money. He's earning a lot more money than any of the people that bugged out to Blue Sky right now. So he has a really strong financial incentive to just play to Twitter. And unfortunately on Twitter, it's super hard to lie without getting a lot of like flaming comments, and people can call that right wing or whatever. No, it's dialogue. So he's making money engaging in dialogue. And then the stick, I won't really go into it, but people, if they want to look, I think this article very clearly captures the mentality of the last 4 years. It's a Wall Street Journal opinion piece, Decline and Fall of America, Not Yet. And it's a really good piece that basically paints the last 4 years, goes into the mental psyche of the Democrat. And it was all about fear, but he says here the actual threat wasn't global warming, Islamophobia, the Supreme Court, police, immigration, or Mr. Trump. It's exclusion from the herd. So he painted the entire Biden regime as basically a family with an abusive father, where if anybody really talks about it, it all might come crashing down. And that threat is kind of gone now. So some people are going to radicalize, other people are hopefully going to wake up, and it just, time will tell how much, but they're not going to, it looks like they're not going to have this unified wall of MSNBC, The View, CNN, just dumping the same talking points into their head. I think that's broken, and I have a really hard time seeing it come back together.
Let me ask you, Alan, if you wouldn't mind chiming in here. I'm curious because, again, you work and you live in obviously what is most arguably the most left-leaning area of America, right? I mean, you know these folks in Hollywood, you know how they think, how they work. You've heard what we've talked about tonight. I mean, I want to get your opinion. What do you think? What have you heard? Post-election, all these changes, things going on, MSNBC and everything. It feels like there's a shift in the wind, but I could be wrong. But I want to hear what what's your take on all this? What have you heard from your side?
Well, I think you overestimate my influence, but I'll tell you what I think though. Two things were happening in Southern California. One is that for the working man, for the working person, the veil was starting to be lifted, and everyone began to see what was really going on. That government doesn't work for them. And that these, the people who spew the news and all the politicians, that they're obviously lying to us. When they're telling us that the economy is doing great, when in all practicality it's not, and we know it. More of those people just began, just getting, in the light, so to speak. But on the other hand, for the people who are in the public, the actors, the Hollywood people. It just seemed like they were just hunkering down. That that they're right. Trump is Hitler. It's just weird because the people who the liberal friends of mine, they have been more than ever willing to shut me out of their lives and just say I can't be around you anymore. But what I found was there are fewer of them. And that they were actually, I've been able to have more conversations with people that I haven't agreed with in a long time, and so it's that line where the radical left is bunkering down, and they're the ones running the party at the time at this time, versus people realizing maybe we need to change things. And to Cenk's credit, I agree with him. They're may be a civil war going on within the Democratic Party, and that'll dictate the future of the party.
It's been bullying. Sorry, go ahead, Matt. No, I was going to say I was going to throw it to you because what Alan said is interesting to me because again, Alan's always been in my opinion, although we don't agree politically on maybe everything. I mean, Alan, like most of us rational adults in the world, he's very a level-headed guy, even though he may not agree with everything we have. That's why we can have such great conversations. But I think that's a very interesting observation that you've had here from what you've heard from friends out there and some of the changing mindset and the willingness to discuss things, even though some have become far more angry and radicalized. Some are having, or at least some folks are willing to have discussions. Matthew, what have you seen?
Well, look, I mean, I've maintained for a long time that part of the issue is that, look, the left bullies people, right?
Yeah.
So what you've seen for a long time is people just being afraid, right? They're afraid to stand up to the more radical elements, right? It literally is the squeaky wheel gets the oil, right? So for the longest time, you've seen if someone would even in the smallest part put their head above the parapet, right, they get shot at, and they didn't want to do that. So what we've seen, certainly, I'm just talking about entertainment-wise in films. So what you've seen is a lack of engagement from conservatives on the whole, right? And I'll tell you what I mean on this. I go on and on and on and on and on about engaging, about people subscribing to different people's YouTube channels, following them on Twitter. And that's really, really important. X. That's really, really important because when you've got people like Robert Downey Jr. or, as I've said before, Mark Ruffalo, those two have about 107 million people follow them, right? On those platforms alone. That's huge, right? That is absolutely huge. So just put a pin in that for a second. Over the years, what you've seen is an infiltration of the left infecting product, right? They've come out and they've been like, okay, well, we're going to have this movie, but we're going to put this little bit of our ideology here. We're just going to sneak it in. We're going to poison it a little bit, not too much. We're just going to poison the well a little bit. And then they've got more and more emboldened by their behavior till the point you get the acolyte. Right. and part of that is because conservatives haven't said, I'm not doing this anymore. I'm not buying Disney Plus. I'm not going and, I'm not watching this movie. I'm not doing that. And what you saw after having not only, I don't know if I can talk about it or say the word, the thing that happened a few years ago that got everyone to stay in their houses.
Oh, yeah,
right?
Pandemic.
I think
we're safe.
This is America.
I don't know if you can say that anymore.
I know.
But what that did, it was a horrible thing, but it was also probably the best thing to happen to us because we were being the frog was boiled, being boiled for a long time, and so what happened was finally people said, I am done. You are not going to shout me down, right? You are not going to tell me that this is okay. I'm not having it anymore. So it was a combination of people just being so fed up because, we talk about this all the time. Conservatives want to go off and they want to make their money. They want to live their lives. They want to be with kids. They want to, on Sundays, they want to go and play with their families. And what we reached, we reached a moment where people were like, do you know what? The cost of eggs is going through the roof. I'm sick to death of not being able to watch a TV show without my, some kind of trans message for my kids. I'm done. I'm done. So I actually think that what has happened is that MSNBC, for example, has been radical because it was working in their eyes. They were getting play. They got the last election, right? They were getting people, the DEI hires were coming out. And have you noticed, like, it's all gone the other way, right? Like, it's not just one thing that's gone the other way. Everything is going the other way. People are saying, you're not going to stop me saying this word, for example. I'm not going to not say it anymore. You've got people turning around and saying, I'm not going to go and watch that movie. I'm not doing it. And by the way, I am going to go and watch the people that I support, right? Because you got to remember that, let's cast our minds back to 2016. If you even wore a red hat, right? You were ostracized. You were like, we're not working with them. They're a pariah, blah, blah, blah. Now people are wearing the red hats. They're like, I'm done. I'm done with this. So I think that what you're seeing is a combination of things pushing back the other way. But it took, in my opinion, conservatives to say, I've had enough.
Make sure you're subscribed to Valliant Renegade and join us every Sunday at 6 p.m. Eastern for the live show.